The suspect, we're learning from sources. Initially, it was unclear because, as you know, there was an exchange of gunfire between law enforcement as well as the gunman. So right now, ATF, of course, is tracing these weapons to see how the gunman obtained him. He's only 20 years old, we've learned from officials. And in Oregon, you have to be 21 to legally buy a gun. So the question is, how did he obtain it? Was it given to him from a family member, a friend? Did he get it at a gun show? Or did he obtain it illegally? Did he buy it online? These are questions that authorities are looking at right now. And ATF also has canine units there on the scene looking to see if there's additional ammunition and the other weapons. But so far, what we know is there were 4 weapons recovered in those classrooms.
And local police say the gunman, the 20-year-old gunman, exchanged fire with law enforcement. The gunman was shot and killed. Tom Fuentes, the law enforcement said they found multiple victims in different classrooms. They're suggesting that this shooter went from classroom to classroom and opened fire.
Right, and this is similar to the Virginia Tech shooting, where that shooter did the same thing. He went right down the rows in the classroom, shooting everybody, then on to the next one. By the time he was done, more than 32 people were killed, including himself. So we've had that kind of multiple shooting, and it does matter in this case. If he had an assault rifle, this would be similar to Sandy Hook Elementary with a semi-automatic assault rifle, 30-round magazines. It can fire at a rate of 700 rounds per minute, just depending on reloading time. So this is really a prolific amount of firepower for people who are literally sitting ducks in those chairs.
Literally, then there's no guns supposedly allowed on this campus. Matthew, authorities, they're looking into gunman's social media activities, especially the night before this attack, and some are suggesting he was actually alerting people. He was onto something. He was going to do something like this, and some of the people he was communicating with were actually egging him on. Are you surprised about this?
No, I'm not surprised, Wolf. We've seen this over the past several cases. It used to be that people left notes. Now they use social media to manifest all their information, their threats, and those sorts of things. So this is not a surprise.
But it is surprising. I think it should be surprising that no one apparently reported these planned activities to law enforcement as far as we know.
Well, Wolf, that may seem like the common sense answer, but if you look back over history and over the last year, there's always been signs before these incidents happen. And there's always been signs where some people could have seen something and said something, and it didn't happen here. In fact, people even encouraged it.
You saw Tom Fuentes, a clearly angry, enraged president of the United States, go out, make that 10 or 12-minute speech that he just made addressing the American people. This is the 15th time by our count that he's gone out and made a statement on television following a mass shooting like this. He says something needs to be done, common sense, gun legislation. What do you think?
Well, I'd say the next step is what? What, Mr. President? Put out a plan, put out a program. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to address firearms, who can have them, under what conditions. This is what we're going to do about the mental health problems in this country that go completely unaddressed in some cases. Lay out a plan, get the people behind it, lead us. Don't, it's great on his part to come out and be so sympathetic and be the mourner in chief as he is after the events. But then when that settles, lead. Tell us what you want. Tell us where we should go. Tell us what the American people think will be a reasonable plan to address this kind of violence.
Because Matthew, you spent your career at the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency, which is supposed to be in charge of guns. And the president repeatedly says, why is it that the United States alone among industrialized countries, advanced countries, has these kinds of mass killings that come up every few weeks or months? How do you stop this?
Well, I think you go back to the president's speech, but you got to remember also the president is a very intelligent guy and a lawyer. He knows that the firearms laws are very complex. I would challenge him to nominate an ATF director and make sure that we have the strength of someone that can work on all sides of the aisle, collaborate, and get this sweeping firearms legislation that he talks about. And as Tom said, develop a plan of action. Talk is cheap. We need action.
And we're showing our viewers live pictures, aerial photos, a live video coming in from the Umpqua Community College there in Roseburg, Oregon. We're watching what's going on. Any indication, Pamela, right now that we're going to be getting any specific new recommendations for what the president describes as common sense gun legislation coming in from the executive branch of the U.S. government?
Well, that is certainly the hope, and you heard it in the president's speech that he seems to be at wit's end and says we all need to come together, as Tom alluded to, and come up with a plan that will actually work and bring both sides together. So I wouldn't be surprised, Wolf, if we do see something laid out from the executive branch soon to, as Tom said, lay out what can be done, because you do have the other side of the gun lobby, who are very strong in Washington, who has prevented other legislation from happening. So the question is, what will they lay out that they can get on board with?
Usually there's frustration level increases for those who want what the president calls common sense gun legislation as we get closer and closer to elections here in the United States. Let's take another quick break. Much more right after this.